Economists are saying that not only will we not go into recession, we are about to experience a new boom. What does that mean for inflation? We're going to talk about that today. It is so extreme to think about how far we have come in the last year and to see how wild and crazy things have become in the stock market. Look at what's going on in the jobs market. Inflation, as you know it today, will be nothing because of what's going to happen. This is truly extreme. Let's begin by talking about this. U.S. bank regulators are set to release their plans next week for a sweeping overhaul of capital rules. They want to do this. They're talking about the new Basel III recommendations that are going through in the banking system. What you need to know about this is that the banks are trying to tighten up right now because of the whole bank crisis, because of the financial crisis, because of all these different events that have happened. They are saying, okay, if you want to not have a failure, if you want to make sure everything's all good, well, then you've got to do these special rules that are going to increase the scrutiny on the banks. But we know that you can't do anything now to fix what has already basically been done. The bank crisis that we just experienced a few months ago, it isn't over, my friends. It's still going on. And by trying to tighten those rules now, you're not going to resolve the problem. Look at what's going on with regional banks. Regional banks are suffering. You know that because they were desperate during this period. They lent also a lot to the commercial real estate side, and that is going to be very concerning as the months go on. Commercial real estate has a shorter time frame for debt, and so that's got to roll over. That's going to be at a higher interest rate than what they can afford, especially many of them. Oh my goodness, they don't have the tenants, and that goes for office, that goes for retail, but it depends on the area, of course. Steep profit fall at Goldman Sachs highlights Wall Street giants' woes. It isn't just Goldman Sachs. We can see this with a lot of different companies, but the financials are potentially a big concern. And so if you have exposure to financial companies, watch out. So they were potentially borrowing at, these cheap rates. Now they got to borrow more expensive rates. That's one thing, but there's a lot of charge-offs that are happening. Basically, people say, I can't pay. So they're assuming that they're going to be a creditor and people are going to be paying them back for different types of loans and things. But what happens when they can't? Well, then they start taking losses, and then those losses add up, and those losses add up. If it's a small amount, okay, it can be written off, and there's no problem. The overall business still functions. But at a certain point, it hits the margins, and that makes its way into the profitability overall of the company. And then you have, the knock-on effects. Oh no, we're taking too much hit over here. We gotta now lay people off. That's the easiest way for them to, sort of make up for that. So job losses could be in the picture as a result of this. Number one weakness, of course, in the regional banks, but it does affect, as they say here, Goldman Sachs as well. The consumer's actually in pretty good shape, according to Bank of America. Even if we go into recession, we're going with a rather good condition with low borrowings and good house price values still. That's according to Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan. Asset quality remains strong and charge-offs continue to normalize. They will remain below pre-2020 levels. That's fantastic, right? According to the big bankers, you don't have to worry about any problem. Do we trust these people? Let me hear it. Let me hear it if we should trust Jamie Dimon and his counterparts. ECB officials see communication as the toughest challenge in July. Policymakers are unlikely to signal a definite hike or a pause, so they don't even know what they're doing. But the whole point here, and the reason I mentioned this, the issues of the Fed are the same with the ECB and all the other central banks. They don't know what to do. We're right at that kind of tipping point. And as I have said in other videos, it's important just to watch this and see what they do, because I showed this chart, if you remember, where we went from a place of year over year measurements, and now that sort of has come down and around, so we could actually see inflation month over month start to pick up. So keep an eye on that as well. That would definitely affect all kinds of different borrowing. Yellen sees disinflation pressures at work as hiring surge fades. So we have this, it's the hiring is cooling, the rents are subsiding, and supply chains are loosening. Supply chains to some degree are doing well. When you look at it internationally, for sure, the ports aren't as busy as they were back in 2021 timeframe, but the shipping costs are quite extreme. I've said this numerous times. I just shipped 4,000 units and change from within the US, and the cost I paid was probably, I think it was 5 times now what I was paying before. Part of that is the fees of the transport, and part of that is the slowdown on the Amazon side. So logistics in general just becoming a real headache in that regard. But we're being told at the same time that, there's no situation with jobs to worry about. Everything's all good. Transport's good, and, supply chains are loosening. Not my experience. Not all of my experience. Anyway, okay? But I'm just one person. I'm giving you what I can, because that in my opinion is better than reading a Bloomberg article, but it's good to get it from both sides. And that's why I bring that to you. I bring my own experience to you. I don't have to share that stuff. That's private stuff, but I want to give you all the knowledge that I have. That's why I try to share as much as I possibly can. You tell me, and I'll bring out more and more and more. Here's where it gets funky. You want to get funky? Well, let's do it. S&P 500, that's the green line. However, the global liquidity proxy, which is essentially, the different central banks, you add that all up and you got a problem, because they've started to reduce their balance sheets globally. Now, these two things are always connected. Just look at this. Just look at this. This is part of the money mirror method, as I talk about all the time. And you will see this, that they match each other, except for now. So there are other ways that you can add liquidity into the system, but just going by this one measure, central banks and what they're doing, their activities, just using that, eventually there's a reversion to the mean. Now that means one of two things. You have a stock market that goes sideways or comes down, all right? Or they start printing up a lot of money right here and devaluing their currencies. So there's only those two options. What do you think it's going to be? Do you see them actually printing a lot more money in I would say a very short period of time? Or is it going to be the fact that the stock market not necessarily doesn't have to crash at this point? It kind of just chops sideways for a period, and then eventually start printing more money and it catches up. Could be one of those two. Let me know. I'm interested to what you have to say. But that right there is a very big indication of things to come. Here we have it. Fed's confident economic benefits will outweigh $31 billion in subsidies for EV battery plants. So essentially what's happening right now is that they are putting their cash into this. Your taxpayer dollars are going into electric vehicles and all these different aspects around electric vehicles. And so that means infrastructure needs to be upgraded, more tax dollars. And that is, some say good, some say bad, certainly creating some jobs, but there is more and more reliance on lithium, more and more reliance on rare earth metals. And guess what? Despite what's, Maine, and I think it was it just outside Phoenix, Arizona, somewhere, that they had these huge potential for lithium. But are they digging it up? Are they refining it? Is that happening? The answer is no. And so we rely on China. That's every country, basically. You'll say, oh, we found this huge lithium mine, lithium, resources here. Or we go to the other country, we found, this particular resource. Are we actually taking it out of the ground? Are we refining it? And are we creating products from that? And the answer is no. That's the same when you look at rare earth metals in general. China just does the vast majority of that final product. And does it matter to have the resource if you're not creating a final product? Not really. Not really, at least not in the short term. Okay, so be careful with that as well. Do you have any exposure to this as an investor? I would be paying attention to that too, because that could be potentially something to watch for. By and large, Americans' finances remain in good shape by historical standards. Inflation-adjusted earnings, after falling for 2 years, have started to rise in recent months. If we start to see inflation really start to cool, that puts more money in people's pockets across the board. Yeah, we get that, but you got to be honest about this. Be honest about this. Credit card usage at an all-time high. You've got student loans that people have to start paying back. You've got people that are taking out mortgages at rates they haven't in their entire lifetime. Most people taking out a mortgage now have never seen rates this high. And you've got all of that compounding with, inflation at levels we haven't seen in a long time either. So this is, not a very good recipe. And saying that the consumer is good because they're spending, the consumer is going to run themselves off a cliff until they Wile E. Coyote fall all the way down. That's a fact. They're going to spend it all. If they get the payday loan, they're going to get the payday loan. If that means they got to sleep on their friend's couch for the next couple of days because they needed that, new latest gadget, they're going to do it. That's the way this works, okay? So don't think of it in that way. Argentina nears recession after output shrank more than expected. Was Argentina not in a recession? I mean, how do you have 100% inflation rate and not be in a recession? I mean, I don't understand what's going on here. But the point is that the currencies are being devalued, whether it is in Argentina, whether it is in Brazil or any other place. We're seeing the same thing. They've printed too much money. But now the solution, the supposed solution, is with the new monetary system that they want to build. That's right. The debt restructuring process needs to be speedier and more effective, according to the IMF managing director. This was at the G20, so they had this G20 meeting, all going on about what they think needs to happen. They're talking about climate change every 42 seconds, and they're just saying that, hey, we've got to be more more lenient on these certain countries that are dealing with the effects of climate change. And so what does that mean? You, the individual in the West, are going to pay higher taxes, and that money is going to be utilized to help other nations. You may agree with that, you may not, but expect that your expenses will go higher as a result. I want to know what you think. Do you think that it is fair that you don't have a choice, but you are basically paying higher taxes? The money goes over to an institution like the IMF, the World Bank. It gets put in some sort of bucket and then gets spread out. Okay? I want to know what you think. I really do. I need to know where your head's at. So that's what we're talking about here. You've got to get your finances in order. You've got to get out of debt. You have to watch out where your investments are held. I know a lot of people, they don't ask the right questions. They're not making the right decisions, and they're lost. Well, that's what this channel is all about. I'm going to stick with me, and I will be bringing you the details, okay? I'm going to try and open up. I'm trying to give you as much as I can. Your investments right now are probably not in the right place. We need to do what we can. I talked about this in my books, but I know that for a lot of people, they're not going to read them. So you can get on the Discord. Inside the Discord, there's lots of information where I'm adding to it, but there's like a breakdown. Okay, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. And I'm doing more of that. I am actually going to create a series of videos that like a choose your own adventure circumstance where you would go through and say, okay, here's the problem of inflation. Then we have, all right, what is your circumstance? Are you in debt and you need to get out of that debt? Do you have a job but you want to earn more money on the side? What is your circumstance? You click on that video, you watch that video. By the end of it, then it takes you to the next series of videos where it says, okay, now with that information, are you in this circumstance? What do you want to do? You click on one of those videos and it just takes you through that series, and you could learn directly from me. But hey, it's already been recorded. I'm going to move you through and you'll know exactly what you got to do. If that sounds cool, stay tuned for that. Hit that thumbs up. Lots of good stuff coming from the Money GPS. I've been ranting too long. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.